Hi, I'm Elise, and you're listening to Letters to Elise on Talk Radio FM 97.3, where stories don't shout to be heard, they whisper. And if you're still awake, I'm listening. I hope you're settled in for the day and are having a lovely, peaceful week so far. Tonight's letter comes from a woman I'll call Lucia. She spent 25 years in the same house, cleaning, folding, listening. She saw everything while being seen by no one until the very last moment. This is what she wrote. Here we go. It started with desperation. My husband left on a Thursday morning, said he was going for cigarettes. I never saw him again. We had $32 in the bank and rent due in 4 days. My daughter had just started at a community college 2 towns over. I had to tell her we couldn't afford textbooks. She cried more than I did. That was the month I found the job listing. Live-in housekeeper needed, discretion essential, private room, meals included. No name, no salary, just an address and a time. I showed up in shoes that were a half size too small and a blouse that still smelled faintly of lemon from the diner job I'd just been let go from. The woman who opened the door didn't introduce herself, just said, "You're early." That's a good sign. She was tall, thin, elegant in a hard way. Her hair was set, her nails were done, and her tone was soft in that practiced way that made you feel smaller. She gave me the tour, walking ahead without ever turning around. These are the boys' rooms. You won't go in unless asked. This is the library, Mr. Caldwell's space. Keep it dusted, but don't move anything. And then the kitchen. This is where you'll spend most of your time. The word you was weighted, clear, final. She handed me a uniform in a dry cleaning bag. Gray, crisp. My name was embroidered on the breast. Lucia. I'd never seen my name stitched like that before. Permanent, branded. That night, I sat alone in a small room at the top of the back stairs, staring at that uniform. And I told myself, just 6 months. Enough to catch up on bills. Maybe save a little. Maybe get out. I stayed 25 years. In the beginning, it wasn't unkind, just structured. Breakfast was served at 7:15, eggs poached, toast diagonally cut. Mrs. Caldwell took hers in silence, reading the society column. The boys, Mark and Elliot, came in late, slumped in chairs, headphones around their necks. They didn't look at me when they asked for things. Juice. Waffles. Where's my blue hoodie? I learned fast. They weren't questions, just commands dressed up like conversation. Once, Elliot left gum in his pants pocket. It melted in the dryer and ruined 3 shirts. Mrs. Caldwell didn't ask what happened. She just held the ruined shirt out and said, "Lucia, I do hope this won't become a pattern." Mr. Caldwell, though, he was polite, always said thank you, always greeted me by name, even when the others didn't. He was quiet, worked long hours, but when he came home, he'd pause at the kitchen doorway and say, "Smells good in here." He didn't hover, didn't flatter, just noticed things. After my first Christmas, he left a card on the counter. No bonus, just a note. To Lucia, thank you for bringing order to the chaos. We see you, JC. I folded it into a book and kept it pressed between pages for years. The house was big, but it never felt warm. Even the family photos felt staged. Matching outfits, forced smiles. I dust them every Thursday. My own daughter's photo stayed tucked in my wallet. I didn't want it out, not where it might look too loved. One time, she called during dinner prep. I answered with wet hands and a smile in my voice. Mrs. Caldwell walked in, took one look at me, and said, "We don't use phones during service hours." She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. That night, I cried in the pantry with the lights off. They had parties often. elegant, sharp-smelling people who sip drinks with words like notes of oak and forward finish. Guests would glance at me, then away, like I was a fixture, a lamp, a shadow. Once I heard a woman whisper, "You're so lucky to have help you can trust." Mrs. Caldwell laughed. "Oh, Lucia. She's harmless, doesn't even speak unless spoken to." I felt something in me shrink when I heard that, and something else harden. Still, I kept showing up, because when you need the job, you make peace with the silence. And over time, I became part of the rhythm. The laundry, the dishes, the grocery runs. Elliot asked me to hem a pair of pants once. Didn't say thank you. Mark borrowed $20 one afternoon, just until the weekend. He never paid me back. When he graduated college, he gave me a wink and said, "You can thank me later. I'll be rich soon." I smiled and returned to clearing the plates. And then, as years passed, the family changed, but the roles didn't. Mark got married. The ceremony was lavish. I set the tables, cleaned up confetti, and drove home before dessert. Mrs. Caldwell told me later, "We didn't want you to feel obligated to come." Obligated. As if sitting at the back of a church would have been a burden to me. Here's part two of the fully rebuilt version of They Treated Her Like the Maid, until the will was read, picking up exactly where we left off. This second half takes us into Mr. Caldwell's illness, a false moment of hope, the will reading, and, most importantly, Lucia's emotional transformation. Soft background tone resumes briefly, then narration continues. Lucia, narrator. It was in the 21st year, sometime after Mark's second divorce, that Mr. Caldwell started to slow down. He'd forget where he left his keys, lose track of meetings. Once I found him standing in the pantry, looking confused. I asked if he was all right. He nodded. Just tired. But it wasn't just tired. Doctors came. Tests were run. A diagnosis was made, discreetly, of course. Parkinson's, early onset. Mrs. Caldwell told me after dinner one night. I was clearing the plates. "We'll need more from you now," she said. "I'll increase your hours. There won't be time off for a while." She didn't ask if I could manage, just assumed I'd say yes. And I did, because what else could I say? The next few years were quiet and heavy. He declined slowly, and then all at once. I learned how to steady his hands, how to warm his feet, how to lift him without making him feel small. The sons didn't visit much. Mark came once, brought a bottle of scotch and forgot it on the porch. Elliot sent a card, the kind with a pre-printed message. He didn't sign it. Mrs. Caldwell stayed busy. Fundraisers, garden clubs, brunches with women who wore pearl earrings and thin smiles. The weight of it fell on me, but I didn't mind, because Mr. Caldwell, even in decline, he remembered my name, thanked me every night, apologized when he had accidents, called me his guardian angel once. I never told anyone that, but I wrote it down in my journal. One day, near the end, I found him awake at dawn. He was sitting in the living room, wrapped in a blanket, staring out the window. "I've lived in this house for 30 years, he said, "but it only felt like home when it smelled like your cooking." I didn't know what to say, so I placed a hand on his shoulder, and we sat like that, in silence, until the sun rose. The day he passed, the house went still, like it was holding its breath. Mrs. Caldwell called the sons, the doctor, the funeral home. She didn't call me. I found out when the hospice nurse came to collect his medications. When I returned to the house the next morning, Mrs. Caldwell handed me a sealed envelope. "Take the week," she said. "We'll be sorting out arrangements. I'll call you when we need you again." There was no hug, no thank you, no look in the eye, just a dismissal. After 25 years, a few days later, I got a call. the family lawyer. He said I should come to the will reading. Mr. Caldwell left you something, he said. I almost didn't go. I didn't want to face them, didn't want to walk into that house as a guest, or worse, as a curiosity. But something in me said, show up. So I did. The house looked the same, but it felt colder. Mark was there, leaning back in a leather chair, sipping coffee like he was already in charge. Elliot scrolled on his phone. Mrs. Caldwell sat at the head of the room, perfectly composed in black. No one acknowledged me. The lawyer, an older man with a tired face, began reading. It was standard at first. To Mrs. Caldwell, investment accounts, jewelry, control of the foundation. To the sons, property shares, trust fund access, vacation homes. And then to Lucia Morales, heads turned. For her 25 years of care, grace, and unseen strength. Mark scoffed. I leave the residence at 18 Westfield Avenue, and all contents therein. It is hers now. Silence. Then, you can't be serious. She's the maid. She doesn't even have a lawyer. I didn't respond. I didn't flinch. Mrs. Caldwell didn't say a word. She just stared ahead, blank, pale, unreadable. The lawyer cleared his throat and continued. The rest of the will passed like a dull echo. I rose slowly, thanked the lawyer, and walked out the front door, not through the service entrance, through the front, for the first time. That evening, I returned. Same house, new meaning. I walked through each room, let my fingers run across furniture I'd polished for decades. I stood in the kitchen, inhaled the scent of lemon and thyme. Then I walked upstairs, opened the door to the master bedroom. The lights were soft, the windows open. A breeze moved through the curtains like a sigh. I stood there, alone, in a space I'd never been allowed to enter unless I was dusting behind a door. And I said his name just once. Thank you. I never saw Mrs. Caldwell again. She sent a lawyer to contest the will. It didn't hold. Everything had been signed, notarized, prepared. Mr. Caldwell had made sure of it. I didn't gloat, didn't celebrate, but I did something I hadn't done in decades. I hosted my daughter and her children that Thanksgiving. I made the same stuffing I used to make for the Caldwells, only this time I served it at my own table. Soft music fades in, warm piano and strings. Wow, that was Lucia's letter. And I keep thinking about something she never said directly, but made me feel in every line. Dignity isn't something someone gives you. It's something you carry, quietly, day after day, even when no one notices, and sometimes the world catches up. Lucia, if you're listening, thank you for reminding us that silence doesn't mean weakness, and that the ones who are overlooked are often the ones holding everything together. If you've got a story, one you've never told, write to me. This is Elise, and I'll be here next time on Letters to Elise. Good night.